Hello everybody, welcome back. I'm Laura, thank you for joining me. Today I'm doing my February wrap up and I am so excited because I read 16 books in February and I didn't rate any of them under 3 stars. And I only have like 2 that are under 4 stars. So I had probably the best reading month ever. And granted, I did read probably more books than I've ever read in one month, but I know, I'm super excited about it. As far as stats, I read 5 thriller mystery books, 1 romance, 2 fantasy books, 1 poetry book, and then 7 horror books, which if you know me, that's pretty crazy. So considering how many books I read, just to warn you, this video is probably going to be a little bit long. The only 3-star I gave this month was the poetry book that I read called Bone by Yrsa Daley Ward. I should have known better because I typically don't read a lot of poetry. I did when I was younger, but not in recent times. And actually the only poetry book that I've ever given a 5-star is called Ordinary Beast by Nicole Seeley. I absolutely loved that book. But generally speaking, I like poetry, but it's not really my cup of tea. So it would be kind of rare for me to actually give like a 5-star to a poetry book. I know that sounds weird because poetry is so important. But as far as like a reading experience, I think for me what it is a bunch of poems lumped together. I don't want to, maybe if I had read it like slowly, like a couple poems at a time or 1 poem a day or something, maybe that's how it's meant to be read. But I read all of them in one sitting. And so maybe that's the reason for my low rating, but I still gave it a 3. It wasn't bad, but it just wasn't my absolute favorite, personally. Okay, I lied. I actually also gave 5 stars to Life of the Party by Olivia Gatwood. I forgot that was poetry. But yeah, so two poetry books that I've given 5 stars to. But I still really liked it. It just wasn't my favorite, as I was saying. This next book I gave 3.5 stars, and it was called The Overnight Guest by Heather Gudenkauf, I think is how you say it. I liked it. It was just kind of like run-of-the-mill mystery to me. So basically we have 3 different timelines going on. We have this author, a true crime author, Wiley Lark, I believe. She goes to like this abandoned farm, not abandoned, but like old, I guess it's kind of abandoned, but it's not like decrepit or anything. It's just that no one lives there. But she goes to this farm to write her latest true crime book. And so we have her, she's in this farmhouse, like a little boy shows up outside out of nowhere in the snow. So she's like, what the hell? Like, how did you get out here? What's the deal? He won't talk. He's like super scared. So she brings him in and tries to like get him to tell her what's going on. Simultaneously, we have the story being told from the year 2000 about this girl, Josie, I want to say, Josie Doyle, and her best friend, Becky. I think it's set in Iowa, I want to say. But anyway, Josie and Becky are best friends. They are supposed to go to like this fair that's happening. This gunman ends up showing up and they run away and they're like trying to get away together, but then Josie leaves Becky. Like they let go briefly and Josie just keeps running and leaves Becky. And then when she gets home, she realizes that her parents are both dead. They've been killed, shot to death. And then her brother and Becky are missing. So it follows that and the police trying to figure out what happened to them. Are they together? Did they leave together? That whole situation. And then we have a third story, which is not specified when it's happening, but it's essentially a little girl and her mom live in this basement, and you just don't really know what's what's happening with that, or who these people are, why, how it's all related. And so that's basically the premise of it. And it was good. It was fine. It was good. I've just read a lot of stories like similar. And so that's why I gave it 3.5 stars. The next book I read was called Written in the Stars, by Alexandria Bellafleur. And this one basically follows this girl, Darcy. She and another girl named Elle. This is a sapphic, like contemporary romance. It's a fake dating trope. So this girl, Darcy, her brother, Brendan, keeps trying to set her up on these dates, trying to like, she had like a breakup. So her brother's trying to like get her back out there to meet new people and keep setting her up on these blind dates. And he sets her up on this date with one of his coworkers. Well, she's not really a coworker. The company that she owns, like, basically an online astrology thing, on like Instagram or social media or whatever. And so they have a collaboration with Brendan's company, which is a dating app. So they're trying to incorporate astrology into this dating app that already exists. But anyway, so Brendan sets Darcy up on this date with Elle, and they immediately are attracted to each other, but they, like, it's pretty clear that Darcy thinks Elle's, you know, the astrology thing is, she doesn't believe in it, and she thinks it's a joke, and is kind of mocking Elle for her profession. And so they basically don't get along. And so when Brendan shows up to try to get Darcy to go out with somebody else, she's just sick of it. She doesn't want him continuing to do this, so she pretends that she and Elle hit it off and that they're gonna see each other again. And so it goes from there, and like starts off as this fake thing, and then, you know, does it become real? Does it not become real? And it was really cute. My one issue that I had, I felt like Darcy just acted in a way that didn't make sense to me. Like, you know, when she first tells Brendan that she and Elle hit it off, you think that she would like let Elle know that she, you know, was doing this. And so when Elle finds out, she basically gets a hold of Darcy and is like, you know, well, first of all, Darcy doesn't know who it is. And so she's like, you know, who is this that's texting me? Like, not realizing like, oh, maybe it's the person that I lied about. And then even when Elle like says who it is, and she's like, why did you say this to your brother? Like, you know, what's going on? She acted completely like surprised that Elle would be questioning her. It's like, you lied and then didn't tell her, and now you like are wondering why she's confused. Like, I just kind of feel like in real life, I don't know, I just don't get why the surprise. Like, what do you mean you're surprised? You put yourself in this situation. Like, why are you now annoyed that you have to deal with the repercussions of that lie? I don't know. I know it's like probably a silly thing, but that was something that kind of irked me about it. And there were other decisions made too that were just like, didn't seem super realistic. But again, the whole thing isn't very realistic. So it was, for what it was really fun and cute. So the next one I have is a 4-star, and it was Night of the Mannequins by Stephen Graham Jones. This was a horror book. This one's kind of hard to explain, but essentially we have a group of friends that are teenagers. They are about to graduate high school and go off their separate ways. The group decide to pull a prank on this other girl in their group who works at a movie theater. I'm sorry, I don't remember everyone's names, but one of their friends works at a movie theater, and so for the past couple of years they've had this mannequin that they found in the woods, and they call him Manny, and they used to like prank people with him. They would dress him up, they would, you know, just put him in random places to scare people. And so they decide to sneak the mannequin into the theater so that when the ushers come around to check everyone's tickets, they'll be really freaked out. And so the main character, Sawyer, he's sitting in the theater during this prank, and he the usher goes to check the ticket of the mannequin, but the usher doesn't respond in any way, like showing that he's like freaked out or anything. And then Sawyer, you know, sees this mannequin get up at the end of the movie and just leave like a normal person. So he starts freaking out. And that's all I can really say without spoiling anything. But what I loved about this book was reading Sawyer's point of view and his logic. This book is really messed up. Like, there were some scenes that were just really, really messed up. And it's even more messed up. I want to spoil it, but I won't. But I'll just say Sawyer makes some questionable decisions, and during those decisions, the way he's explaining why he's doing it is just like too much. It's just too much. And it was so fun to read. It's not like, I mean, it's a dark book, you know, but like, it was just, there was something fun about it. I loved reading it. I loved reading his point of view. And I definitely want to read more from Stephen Graham Jones. I've heard nothing but good things. So the next one I have was another horror book, another 4-star, and it was called Sour Candy by Keelan Patrick Burke. This one is super hard to explain. I'm just going to read the synopsis because this synopsis is what hooked me. At first glance, Phil Pendleton and his son Adam are just an ordinary father and son, no different from any other. They take walks in the park together, visit county fairs, museums, and zoos, and eat together overlooking the lake. Some might say the father is a little too accommodating given the lack of discipline when the child loses his temper in public. Some might say he spoils his son by allowing him to set his own bedtimes and eat candy whenever he wants. Some might say that such leniency is starting to take a toll on the father, given how his health has declined. What no one knows is that Phil is a prisoner, and that up until a few weeks ago, and a chance encounter at a grocery store, he had never seen the child before in his life. Like, I read that and I was just like, what? Like, I had to read it. It was a short story. That one and, actually quite a few of these are short stories. Like Night at the Mannequins was a short story, and this one was a short story. So that's the description. This is one that I like seriously want to spoil, but I won't. But I will say that this guy, Phil, is at a grocery store. He sees this mother and son, and they're acting really strangely. The kid is like screaming, just full blown like screaming, and everyone's kind of like, you know, looking at the mom and looking at the kid and like, you know, shut your kid up kind of thing. Shortly after that, I can't, like, how do I say without spoiling anything? But shortly after that, Phil encounters the kid again, and it goes from there, and it's crazy. It was really, also really fun to read. I love a creepy kid type situation if it's done well. I feel like this one definitely was. And it was also like frustrating to read because there were parts where like essentially no one would believe Phil that he didn't know this kid. And things happened to make it seem like he's just crazy. And so it was really frustrating to read those parts, but ultimately it was a really good book. There was one part that I didn't love, and it had to do with the origins of this kid. I just feel like it took kind of a weird turn, but yeah, I loved it. Gave it 4 stars. Okay, the next book was also a 4-star. It's called The Patient by Jasper DeWitt. This was another short story. I like this one because it was told in like kind of like a Reddit forum. And so it was this post by this guy Parker, who's like a psychologist. And he works for Sorry, I had to look it up because I forgot the details. But yeah, he works for a mental hospital in New England. And so essentially there's this, I forgot I had the physical copy of this book. So there's this guy who is a patient there who everyone's afraid to work with. Like, no one will work with him because every doctor who has tried to work with him has gone crazy or committed suicide. And so this Dr. Parker is like, you know, this young, arrogant guy who's like, oh, I'm gonna be the one to cure this guy. And so he basically convinces the boss to let him have a chance working with this patient. And so he goes to meet him, and trying to like describe this without spoiling anything. It's a whole thing that spirals out of control, and this is another one that took a turn that is the only reason it didn't get a 5-star, was the turn it took. But overall, I absolutely loved it. I got freaked out when I finished it, just for a little bit, just for like an hour, and then I forgot about it. But yeah, this one actually like made me a little bit scared, which was nice. So 4 stars for that one. Next up, we have The Grownup by Gillian Flynn. This was another 4-star. This is another short story. And in this one, we have this lady who works. She's kind of like, not in a harmful way, but she's kind of like committing fraud a little bit because she's pretending to be a psychic. And she works at this place where they read people's auras and stuff like that. And so this lady comes in, this lady Susan comes in one day looking for help because she thinks that something's wrong with her house, and like her stepson is like doing really disturbing things, kind of a whole mess of stuff. And so she's like, so the woman, the main character, goes with her to take a look at the house and stuff, and gets genuinely freaked out because the stepson is doing disturbing stuff, and there's like some unexplainable things happening in the house, and that's pretty much all I can say. But it was a fun short read. I read it in like an hour, and I really loved the ending on this one. But yeah, so it's kind of just like a fun little ghost story. The next one I have is The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. That's like so hard to say. By Grady Hendrix. And my friend Julia recommended this book. Essentially, I mean, the title's pretty self-descriptive, but essentially we have this group of ladies from the South. It's set in the 90s, which I absolutely loved. But we have this lady, Patricia. She's kind of like the main character, and she is part of this book club. They're basically reading all these like really boring books that are probably historically important, but you know, nobody is really into them. So after the book club one day, a group of them, like 5 of them, decide to start like a different book club. They're not going to call it a book club, but they essentially start a different book club where they're going to read like true crime and like murder mysteries and stuff like that. So it's Patricia, and then the other characters, we have Grace, Kitty, Slick, and Mary Ellen. And Kitty was probably my favorite. I loved her. And anyway, these women go to each other's houses and, you know, watch each other's kids, and they're like a real community. And then this guy ends up moving into the town, and he is a vampire, basically. And so Patricia starts to, you know, feel kind of weird about him and she has suspicions about him. And, you know, everyone kept saying like, oh, you're just like reading all these true crime books. And, you know, at one point she says to one of the ladies, like, I just wish something interesting would happen here, because, you know, our town is like so nice and peaceful, like none of them lock their doors, you know. But she's like, oh, just part of me wishes sometimes that like something would happen. And so then when she starts like suspecting this guy of, you know, not being a good guy, her friends are like, you just wanted something to happen. You told me that you wanted something to happen, and now you're just trying to find something. And it's so much gaslighting in this book, which is the point. You're supposed to be mad at how much they're gaslighting this lady, but it was super frustrating. And honestly, for me, the only reason that it wasn't a 5-star is because of the amount of time that was spent on the gaslighting. Like, I understand that it was there to piss you off, but for me, as a person who already believes in misogyny and knows how that works, it was a little bit like, okay, like, we get it. It's, you know, like, let's move on from this. It just felt like it was over pushed a tiny bit. But that being said, like, I absolutely loved the story, and I loved the characters. So the next book up was called Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke by Eric LaRocca. This was also a very short story. I read it in like 2 hours, I think. And this was another horror book. The framing is like a kind of a true crime, like case notes, and it's told in a completely epistolary, like through messages, and essentially, which made it really easy to read. And essentially, we have this young woman, Agnes, who is trying to sell like an apple peeler, like an antique apple peeler, on some forum. And so this other girl, Zoe, starts to message her asking to buy the apple peeler, and they start going back and forth, and then things get really weird and out of hand. This book was messed up. This book made me want to throw up like 3 times, which is kind of hard to do, honestly. So just lots of trigger warnings for, you know, animal abuse, child abuse, I guess, graphic depictions of things. But yeah, I really can't say much without spoiling, but it's a really short read, so it's not like a super long time investment, if you're interested. And it will creep you out and gross you out. I pretty much guarantee it. And that's all I have to say about that one. I loved it. I thought it was so good. The next book is Horrorstor by Grady Hendrix. I really just almost forget his name. This was the second Grady Hendrix book that I read, and I love this cover. Okay, so it's like an IKEA catalog, which I think is so cool. And it even has like little pictures. It looks super cute, but it's not. It's horror. That being said, it was still really fun. Essentially, we have this lady, Amy, who works at this place, Orsk. I think that's how you say it. It's supposed to be like an IKEA, and they even mention like that it's an IKEA ripoff. But it's this furniture store. She's just kind of going through the motions. She's just kind of clocking in, clocking out. And then we have her boss, Basil. I in my head, I was pronouncing it Basil, but so he's like this corporate, like, I mean, he's a manager, but he's very like, every word he says is like corporate lingo. He reminds me of, if you've ever seen the movie Office Space, he's like the boss who works at the restaurant that Jennifer Aniston works at, that's like telling her how many pieces of flair to put on her apron and stuff. That's who this guy reminded me of. And then we have some side characters. Ruth Ann, she's like this really sweet older lady. And then we have Matt and Trinity, and they also work. I mean, all these people work there. But essentially they keep coming in the morning and stuff is like broken. And so Basil asks Amy and Ruth Ann to stay overnight to kind of figure out what's going on. Like who is someone breaking in? You know, what is happening in this store? So they kind of reluctantly agree. And what I realized reading this book is I love books set in, I know there's a name for it and I'm blanking right now, but it's like books that are set in one location, like how The Breakfast Club is as a movie. Like I like that in book form, like everyone's in one place for the whole time. Not necessarily like one room, but like, you know, this whole book takes place pretty much in this store. And I love that. I love that as a setting. But anyway, so they're staying overnight. They realize pretty soon that Matt and Trinity are also there. And they think that it's paranormal. So they're gonna try to like catch some ghosts basically. And some really weird stuff starts happening. Amy finds like, let me see if I can find the page. She goes to the bathroom. She basically keeps going to the bathroom because she doesn't want to be around her boss. He's just like annoying her. And here you can see, so she finds this kind of writing in the bathroom, which is like weird and creepy. So essentially they just go throughout the night, like trying to figure out what's going on. A lot of weird things happen. That's all I can really say. But it's very fun and entertaining and definitely creepy at a lot of points. But yeah, overall I loved it. I gave it 4 stars. The next book I want to talk about is called Across the Green Grass Fields by Shauna McGuire. It's a fantasy book. It is the 6th book in the Wayward Children series. And just like a little description of the series. It is essentially about this school, so School for Wayward Children. Eleanor West is like the owner of the school, and it's essentially there to help kids who've gone through magical doorways into other worlds. When they come back to our world and they're like depressed and upset and sad, they go to this school that tries to help them like get over it. So everyone in this world, everyone who has gone through these doors go to a world that is specifically built for them. So there's different kinds. There's like chaos worlds where everything's, you know, has rules. Essentially there's a bunch of different types of worlds and they're each unique to certain types of people. And so all of the books kind of center around 1 or 2 of the kids at the school. This one is the 6th one, and it's about this girl, Reagan. She's like a horse girl, basically, and goes to a world with horses and unicorns and things, which is a perfect world for her. And what I really loved about this one, I gave it 4 stars, by the way. I don't know if I said that. But what I really love about this one is it involves an intersex character, which you know, you don't see ever anywhere. And so that was really interesting. But she's really upset because she finds out that she's intersex, and she tells someone who she thinks is a friend about it. And the friend, of course, who isn't really her friend, kind of freaks out and tells everybody her secret. And so as she's running away from that is when she finds her door. And then the rest of the book is set in the Hooflands, which is where her world is. And yeah, I've given every other book, I think, so there's 6 books. Well, actually there's more than that, but by the time I'd read this one, it was my 6th one. And I think I gave it 4 stars. I've given one other one 4 stars, but for the most part, the series has been a 5-star situation all the way through. I love the series. I also read the 7th book, which I'll talk about next, but I'm gonna keep reading it. There's more coming. But I love the series as a whole because every book talks about a different issue. And I think it's really important for like teenagers to read these books because they you know, make it known that you are unique and that there's nothing wrong with you if you're not the same as everybody else. And I think they just present a really good conversation and a really good message. So speaking of, I also read the 7th book, Where the Drowned Girls Go, and I gave that one, this is gonna throw off my little rating system, but I gave that one a 5-star. So the 7th one is about Cora, who's a character that has already been introduced in one of the earlier books. Can't remember which one, but it wasn't really about her, she was just in it. So this story is really centered on her, but she is like a mermaid basically, which I automatically love. Cora is my favorite character from the series, for 2 reasons. Well, more than 2 reasons, but she's a mermaid, which is like one of my favorite things to read about. And also she is fat, and so it is, the story surrounding her has to do with body acceptance, insecurities, you know, lack of confidence due to body image. And I love the conversation had about, you know, fat phobia and judging others and assuming that you know someone's health by what they look like. And I just think that the conversation is really important. I think it's not discussed enough, especially in books that are geared toward like teenagers and young adults. And I think it's, you know, just should be talked about more. So in this one, we basically have Cora is at Eleanor West, but she has been having a really hard time because of some events that happened in earlier books that she was a part of. And so she decides she doesn't want to find her door anymore. She wants to just forget about her door completely and go back to living a normal life without any memory of her world, because it's hurting her too much. So she decides to go to a different school called Whitethorn. And this school is essentially, they still deal with students with special doors, but instead of trying to help them like get back to their world, they try to help students forget their world. So she goes there, and most of the book is centered at that school. And I kind of wish, I still give it 5 stars, but my one little critique is that I wish it had explored Cora's world more and not so much centered on the school itself. I wanted to read more about Cora's adventures in her special world, and hopefully at some point we will. But yeah, overall, that was a 5-star. Again, it's strictly, you know, the conversations being had about body image and body acceptance and loving yourself, and everyone having a place in the world, whether, you know, they think they do or not, and the uniqueness of people. Moving on, this is, I know I did a 5-star, but we're going back to 4.5 star. And so the next book I want to talk about is Lock Every Door by Riley Sager. This book I went back and forth on so many times. I finished it and I was like,
3.5 maybe?
I loved the writing. There were just some choices made that I didn't really get. But I kept thinking about it. And even still, like, I think about this book every couple days. So I'm like, okay, it has to be higher than that, just simply for the fact that I keep thinking about it. So I ended up settling on a 4.5. It wasn't quite a 5, but it was good. So in this one, we have, so I'm counting this as a horror, but it could also be a thriller. I'm actually not sure exactly where it falls. I think maybe a thriller with a touch of horror. But essentially we have this young girl, Jules Larson, and she has like nothing. She caught her boyfriend cheating and she lost her job, and so she's just kind of screwed. She also has like a sister who went missing years before. So she's not in a great place. And she's obsessed with this apartment complex called the Bartholomew, which I think the Bartholomew is a real place, but not an apartment. It's like a church or something. But anyway, her favorite author wrote this book about the Bartholomew, which is an apartment place in this book. And so she ends up seeing an ad for an apartment sitter at this place that she's always wanted to go to or live in. And so she answers the ad, and it kind of seems too good to be true. They're gonna pay her, I think it's $4,000 a month just to stay at this apartment, basically. So she's like, there's no way this is like legit, you know? And so there's some weird rules, like they're not allowed to have visitors at all, no visitors. She has to spend every night in the apartment. And like she can't like post any pictures on social media of it. She basically says like everyone that lives here is super private and we need to respect that. And so she makes friends with this other apartment sitter named Ingrid, and then Ingrid goes missing. So she basically spends the whole book like trying to figure out what happened to Ingrid and trying to figure out like what is up with this apartment building. Like stuff isn't what it seems here. And so that's basically the premise. The issue that I had with this, I feel like Jules wasn't very smart in a lot of ways. Like even in the interview with Leslie, I think was her name. She's like the apartment manager. Leslie asks her like, essentially if she's like nosy, like, do you, you know, ask a lot of questions and stuff? And are you nosy? And she's like, no, like, I don't really care like what goes on here. I just want to be paid to live in this apartment. And so like immediately Jules starts asking questions and being nosy. And so I'm just like, okay, like, not that she shouldn't, but it's just like, that wasn't a red flag to you when she asked if you were nosy, and then you immediately start noticing that things are kind of weird. Like, how are you not connecting that? You know? I don't know. This might sound really silly, but that's just how I felt. And then later and later in the book, just feels like her decisions kept getting dumber and dumber to me. She just did a lot of things that like are typical of horror, I guess, like, which I think is kind of how Riley Sager writes. I think he, from what I know, his writing is reminiscent of like horror movies. So, I mean, maybe that's like the joke is, you know, she's acting like a dumb girl in a horror movie. But yeah, some of the stuff she did kind of bothered me, and I don't know, kind of took me out of it a little bit. And then the ending was a little bit anticlimactic, I guess. So yeah, I mean, like I said, I gave it 4.5. I still really liked it. I just think there were a couple minor tweaks that could have really made it a 5-star, but like I said, I still think about it like on a regular basis, so it's gotta be pretty good. The next one was also a 4.5, and it's I Let You Go by Claire McIntosh. This book is another one that's really hard to explain without giving anything away, so I'll just read the back. It says, on a rainy afternoon, a mother's life is shattered as her son slips from her grip and runs into the street. I Let You Go follows Jenna Gray as she moves to a ramshackle cottage on the remote Welsh coast, trying to escape the memory of the car accident that plays again and again in her mind, desperate to heal from the loss of her child and the rest of her painful past. At the same time, the novel tracks the pair of Bristol police investigators trying to get to the bottom of this hit and run. As they chase down one hopeless lead after another, they find themselves as drawn to each other as they are to the frustrating, twist-filled case before them. So, I know that doesn't explain a whole lot, but you really should go into this book blind, as blind as possible, because there's a twist in here that's really good. I guessed it, but I'm not gonna punish the book for me randomly guessing what the twist was, because I know it's a twist that not a lot of people will see coming. I just get lucky sometimes, but like, it's still a really good twist that you don't see. very often at all. So I would highly, highly, highly recommend this. Like I said, I just got lucky, but I still enjoyed it immensely. The only reason it wasn't a 5 is because really the ending, to be honest, it just wasn't quite exactly what I wanted, or exactly what I think it could have done. But I loved, so Ray and Kate, they are the 2 investigators. And it's so weird to me that I love stories from the point of view of like detectives. I don't know, like only in fiction. I know it sounds weird, but in real life, I don't have any special connection to like detectives or anything like that. I don't know. In fiction books, I find it intriguing. And then Jenna, I loved her, and also trigger warnings for like domestic abuse, physical abuse, mental abuse. It's rough. It gets pretty dark, to be honest. But yeah, I loved reading everyone's point of views, and that's all I can really say without spoiling. But such a good book. Highly, highly recommend. It was almost a 5-star. I've actually debated, maybe it was a 5-star, but for right now, we'll stick with 4.5. Next up, we have Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney. This was a 5-star thriller book. I was obsessed with this book. I read it all in one sitting, and it was a pretty lengthy book, but I could not put it down. I loved Alice Feeney's writing style. I know she's kind of a hit or miss for some people, and that's the only book I've read so far by her, but I was obsessed with her writing. I'm just gonna read the description. It says, things have been wrong with Mr. and Mrs. Wright for a long time. When Adam and Amelia went a weekend away to Scotland, it might just be what their marriage needs. Self-confessed workaholic and screenwriter Adam Wright has lived with face blindness his whole life. He can't recognize friends or family or even his own wife. Every anniversary, the couple exchange traditional gifts, paper, cotton, pottery, tin, and each year Adam's wife writes him a letter that she never lets him read, until now. They both know this weekend will make or break their marriage, but they didn't randomly win this trip. One of them is lying, and someone doesn't want them to live happily ever after. 10 years of marriage, 10 years of secrets, and an anniversary they will never forget. So that's basically it. That's a perfect description. I loved the face blindness aspect to it. I've never seen that before. So I love that. And then there were also some really cool like meta moments within the book, because Adam has been writing, he essentially wrote screenplays for one of his favorite authors, like his books, but he has his own screenplay that he's been working on for years called Rock, Paper, Scissors. And so they mention Rock, Paper, Scissors several times within the book, which I thought was pretty cool. So the twist, I did not guess. I guessed aspects of it, but not really. Not enough that I can give myself credit. It was so good. It was, probably the best book I've read this year so far, I want to say. I might be lying, but as of right now, that's what I would say. So definite 5-star. I'm immediately going to be reading more Alice Feeney. And then finally we have, I just hit myself. We have Who Is Maud Dixon by Alexandra Andrews. If you want to read this book, do not read the description on Goodreads because they straight up spoil part of the book in the description. And luckily, when I heard about this book, I had heard to not read the description. So I went into it knowing nothing. I still guessed the twist, the main twist that is ruined. I felt like it was a little bit obvious, but I'm still glad I didn't read that description because I'm glad I got to still have it be a reveal. This book essentially follows this young woman, Florence Darrow. she is, first of all, at the beginning of this book, I really, really related to Florence. Her relationship with her mother is like identical to mine with my mother. And so she, this author, Maud Dixon, is essentially, nobody knows who she is. There's like speculation about who she is, but no one knows her real identity. And so Florence gets the opportunity to go be an assistant to the lady who is actually, you know, Maud Dixon. So she gets to go and be her assistant, and that's all I can really say. Things get wacky. And I will say, like, toward the end of the book, I realized that I did not relate to Florence at all. Every decision she made me relate to her less and less. But I still loved following her and loved just this whole story. I mean, I will say the first couple chapters, you know, were a bit to get through, but probably by, I don't know, maybe the 5th or 6th chapter, I was like flying through this book, and I read it in like less than a day. So, and it's pretty long. So yeah, I flew through it. I was so invested in Florence and what was going to happen. And yeah, I absolutely loved it. So definite 5-star, not even a question. So that is it. That is all 16 books. I feel like I've been talking forever. I could probably, I mean, I could go on and on and on. I could say so many more things, but you know, everyone has lives and stuff to get to. So thank you so much for watching. If you are so inclined, if you wouldn't mind subscribing, maybe dropping a like, leave a comment if you want to, and I will talk to you all later.